Once upon a time, in a quirky little town called Riskington, there lived a peculiar fellow named Benny the Bean Counter. Benny was known far and wide for his extraordinary aversion to risk. He was a master at avoiding anything remotely adventurous or daring. Benny's life was all about routines, predictability, and his collection of antique calculators. Now, in Riskington, the townsfolk were quite the opposite of Benny. They thrived on taking risks, whether it was trying new foods, starting unusual businesses, or exploring the mysterious forest that bordered their town. They embraced change with open arms, and they were always excited about what the future might bring. One sunny morning, as Benny was busy meticulously counting his beans for the umpteenth time, he overheard a group of townsfolk discussing a grand event that was about to take place, the Riskington Carnival of the Unusual. This annual carnival was a celebration of all things daring and quirky, from peculiar food concoctions to bizarre games and activities. As Benny eavesdropped on the conversation, his heart began to pound with a mix of anxiety and curiosity. He had never attended the Riskington Carnival of the Unusual, but this year, something inside him stirred. Perhaps it was the quote by Mark Zuckerberg he had read recently. The biggest risk is not taking any risk. In a world that is changing quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is not taking risks. Benny couldn't shake the feeling that it was time for him to take a risk of his own. With newfound determination, Benny decided he would attend the carnival and participate in its most unusual event, the whimsical costume parade. The catch was that contestants had to wear the quirkiest, most outlandish costumes they could imagine. Benny had never worn anything other than his standard bean counter attire, so this was a colossal leap out of his comfort zone. He spent days brainstorming ideas for his costume, and finally, he settled on the most eccentric idea he could muster, a giant calculator costume. It would be a tribute to his beloved calculators, and it would certainly be unusual by the town's standards. Creating the costume was an adventure in itself. Benny had to gather materials from all over town, including cardboard boxes, aluminum foil, and colorful paint. He even enlisted the help of a few townsfolk who were experts in crafting peculiar costumes. As the day of the carnival drew near, Benny's anxiety grew. He questioned his decision repeatedly, wondering if he was making a huge mistake. But he couldn't forget Mark Zuckerberg's words about the importance of taking risks in a changing world. On the day of the carnival, Benny donned his giant calculator costume. He felt like a walking, talking math machine. The townsfolk gathered at the town square, their costumes ranging from the fantastical to the downright absurd. As Benny nervously stepped into the parade lineup, he couldn't help but notice the curious looks from the crowd. People whispered and giggled, and he overheard someone say, "Who's the guy in the calculator costume? Is that Benny the Bean Counter? He must have lost his marbles." But Benny took a deep breath and remembered the quote that had inspired him. He knew he was taking a risk, and that was the point. It was time to embrace change and challenge his own fear of the unknown. As the parade began, Benny walked alongside whimsical characters in all sorts of costumes. There were flying squirrels, singing teapots, and even a person dressed as a giant rubber duck. The crowd burst into laughter and applause, and Benny felt a mixture of embarrassment and exhilaration. Just when he thought things couldn't get any more unusual, a sudden downpour of rain surprised everyone. The carnival turned into a wet and wild celebration as people danced, slid on makeshift water slides, and laughed at the unexpected turn of events. Benny's cardboard calculator costume started to disintegrate in the rain, and soon he was drenched and standing in a puddle of water. But instead of feeling defeated, Benny couldn't help but laugh along with the rest of the townsfolk. This was the most adventurous day of his life, and he was loving every minute of it. The carnival continued into the evening, with people savoring strange food combinations, playing wacky games, and dancing in the rain. Benny even joined in on a game of soggy bean toss, where contestants threw beans into buckets filled with water. He didn't win, but he didn't mind one bit. As the carnival came to a close, Benny realized something profound. Taking the risk of attending the carnival and wearing the most unusual costume he could imagine had opened up a world of new experiences and friendships he had never imagined possible. He had embraced change, stepped out of his comfort zone, and found joy in the unexpected. The townsfolk of Riskington had a newfound respect for Benny the Bean Counter. They saw him not as the guy who counted beans, but as the guy who had the courage to take a risk and embrace the unusual. And they realized that sometimes the biggest risk of all is not taking any risks. As Benny walked home that night, still wearing the remnants of his soggy calculator costume, he felt a sense of contentment he had never known before. He knew that the world was changing quickly, and he was ready to face it with open arms, quirky costumes, and a heart full of laughter. And so, in the quirky town of Riskington, Benny the Bean Counter had learned a valuable lesson: that sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risk, and the only strategy guaranteed to fail is not embracing change and the joy it can bring. Benny's life had become a little more colorful, a little more unusual, and a lot more fun, all because he had taken a chance on the Riskington Carnival of the Unusual.